Here at The Night Shift, we make it our business to go beyond the headlines and uncover the real mysteries behind UFOs, UAPs, NHI, disclosure, and everything else your friends, family, and coworkers are so sick and tired of hearing you go on and on about. Mysteries like, why are they here? Have we already made contact? If we have, what form has that contact taken? Are there agreements in place? How many different types of NHI are there? What are they doing here? And that's why I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest. He is someone who has spent his entire career pushing the boundaries of what we know about this topic, and I first became aware of his work through a fantastic interview that Tim Ventura did on his channel, and I highly encourage you all to go there and watch that interview in its entirety because it is a great primer for what we're going to get into today. Dr. Eamonn Ansbro is an accomplished astronomer and a true pioneer in the study of UAPs. He is the CEO of Space Explorations Limited, where he develops cutting-edge communication systems for the space industry. With advanced degrees in planetary space sciences and a background in solar system studies and electro-optics, his research spans both mainstream astronomy and the uncharted territories of UAP investigations. A fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society and the Irish National Coordinator for the International Astronomical Union in Astronomy Education, Dr. Ansbro also chairs the Space and Science Division for the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research. He is a key member of the UK SETI Research Network and has investigated over 150 UAP cases. His groundbreaking research suggests that UAPs may function as techno-signatures monitoring Earth through an advanced observational program. Perhaps even more astonishing, his findings indicate that non-human intelligence behind UAPs may be using neurological quantum communication, concepts like quantum entanglement and teleportation, to interface with human consciousnesses. This has led him to explore the development of quantum communication transceivers to bridge the gap between NHI and humanity. And tonight we're going to deep dive into his discoveries, the future of quantum communication, and what all of this means for disclosure. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Eamonn Ansbro. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and chat with me today. This is something I've been looking forward to for well over a year.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I saw an interview you did with Tim Ventura. I want to say it was over a year ago. It's got to be at least that.
Yes.
I found it really interesting that you had articulated this surveillance program, sort of. It seemed like you'd come up with a system of sort of predicting where things could happen in which area and at what time. And I just found that very compelling. And I didn't see anyone else talking about it. And I thought that was really strange because it seems like this is the type of direction we need to be moving in to start getting some answers.
Yeah, it's I was going to say, Clint, it's a very interesting sociological phenomena. You could say it's like a psychological perception problem we have, because I rarely give interviews, and it was Tim Ventura through somebody else had seen my presentation in the UK, physically that is, right, at a conference, and had told Tim Ventura, and I was quite reluctant in doing it because I thought people weren't ready for this kind of thing, bringing it to another level altogether beyond UFOs, So he insisted, persisted, fair play to him. And then he came back to me again, I think it was a short time later. And I said, look, I've already given an interview to you. And he said, well, we've had lots of emails. There's a lot of interest in what you're doing. And I said, oh, okay. So I did a second one for him. And apparently it's got a lot of views. So I didn't appreciate the whole podcasting area and a number of views in that. But he said, yeah, we've got an enormous amount of views of what you're doing and other stuff. And I said, oh, I'd be delighted then if that's the case, that people are actually integrating this reality now. That's how it evolved there in the last 2 years.
Well, a number of those views were me watching it over and over and just trying to parse out some of the things that you were saying.
As you know, Fred Paulison and Erling, whom I know personally, because I don't know if, well, you had them on there about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Erlin and Fred. So yeah, there was a conference in Hesselin and Fieldwork, but I was one of the last presenters at it. So I was introducing second generation UAP for scientists, how to do it, going beyond the whole, the whole UFO area.
Have you looked into anything that's being done at the Soul Foundation at all? Have you spoken with anybody from that group?
I haven't, but indirectly, I know some of them know what I'm doing, all right, but no one has actually ever contacted me, which is fine. Yeah, I don't mind. I have enough to do in my own professional research. I do. It's up to people if they want to contact me. But it's quite rare having interviews, and as you quite rightly said, Clint, you saw me on the Tim Ventura and also APEC as well, because I was introducing with a colleague of mine, Dr. Hugh Deasy, another Irish guy, to do with communication systems for the future, to do with extraterrestrial intelligence. So I have been in the SETI game for a long time, but I figured out SETI were going the wrong approach there about 25 years ago. And I thought, no, it's not going to happen in the electromagnetic spectrum. These guys out there are not using EM spectrum. They're using quantum. I knew that a long time ago.
That was what was so... I'm so sorry to cut you off, but that's what caught my attention. That was seemed like such a brilliant observation, and I don't know why no one else talks about it. How slow that communication is, and it just doesn't seem like it makes sense.
You have to appreciate that I have been ostracized and banned from conferences, rejected papers over the last 25 years nearly. It's quite normal with me being banned, so...
You get a lot of pushback, really?
Yeah, very much. Oh, my God.
From what areas? Who's pushing back against the work that you're doing?
The SETI community.
How do they defend their position that this is the right approach?
Well, they're not open for new methods, new ways of actually, really new, maybe radical for them. So they're pretty unhappy with me over the decades.
So they're set in their ways, and they've got an established framework for what they're doing.
And of course, all the funding, that's there and so forth. They're not prepared to go into areas that may stretch them. If you saw some of the emails I would get, you'd be shocked.
Oh my goodness, I can imagine.
But I don't let it personally affect me at all, because I'm well aware that they're right where they are. Not in due respect with everybody, scientists, people, etc. I respect everybody, and everybody's right where they are. And it's just a psychological perception problem and worldview situation. So they're not prepared to introduce metaphysics, which I integrate in all the research I do. Metaphysics, all right, because it was deleted way back in the 1820s. So you'd have a cultural transformation from that period 200 years ago, and it's actually phased out everything to do with the metaphysical side. But that's where I'm coming from, because if you don't apply metaphysics to this, well, then you're only going to discover one aspect of the whole phenomenon, we'll say. If it's the UAP, you've got to introduce other facts. So, but yeah, you could say I'm a maverick scientist,
I want to dig into the metaphysics aspect of it, and I'm just curious how much you pay attention to current events in the space, and are you following all of the various different storylines that are going on in the UFO UAP world right now? Or are you more focused on the work that you're doing?
Well, I'm more focused on the work I do, but I'm well aware of what's going on. And in fact, in Hesselin, there was quite, discussion there about what goes on in the States. And in my last presentation, I said to them that, look, if you get trapped in all the noise in the US, you've lost the plot, because they're not going to introduce some of the stuff that I'm dealing with. And in fact, at the end, maybe this is why Fred Paulson mentioned me, is because I got a standing ovation, because people were realizing that this is the way to go. It's not the Galileo approach and all the other stuff, which I'm very familiar with, So
do you think that? Well, you know what? We'll get into that. We'll get into that. I want to save it for the conversation. But this is My audience is very much interested in the metaphysical aspect of all of this, but they're also very interested in brass tacks, down to earth, really basic, simple questions of like, who are we dealing with? What are we dealing with? Is it something that we can predict with any kind of accuracy when it's going to happen? Just practical, hands-on kind of questions. And so I thought this would be such a wonderful fit. And I was so thrilled that Erling was able to put us in contact and make this connect.
Great. Yeah.
I thought that, go right ahead.
No, you're okay. Go.
I thought that we could just keep it really casual, and I'll introduce you. I've got your bio here, and I could just read you in. And then, do you want to go through? I know you had a prepared presentation for Tim. Do you want to go through that again, or do you? How would you like to?
The presentation I have is very different because this brings it onto a more advanced level. I think now that I know that your audience are entertaining metaphysical, that is great, because this is the foundation you need actually to spearhead what I'm talking about. And you'll see this actually as we go through. By the way, I'm also a practical guy. I'm hands-on dealing with this kind of stuff. All right, it's not all theoretical. I do all the experiments, carry them out with others, we've had success privately in other words, to prove various things, and that's what makes me excited all these years to keep going on it.
This is a thrill, and I was looking at the ICER network website, and I've got the Kingsland Observatory website and your space exploration website up here as well. And I was just looking at the various different things you're doing. How much work? I would. Just curious, what is the state of the art of quantum communications right now? Have we, since the Tim Ventura interview you did, has there been any further development in that area?
There has been breakthroughs in that area in the last few years, the Chinese in particular in 2016. But this is on a short distance, from a LEO satellite down to Tibetan plateau, with 5 receivers. That was 2016. Since then, others have been doing it. Certainly in the EU, there was, under the Horizon program, they did a quantum communications terrestrially, that is, between, I think it was 2 of the islands in the Canary Islands. That was there a few years ago. I'm involved in a program that's only just started. It has been proposed in the European Union under the Horizon program. The Horizon is all to do with R&D. It's called Quantel. It's not actually out there at the moment because they formed all these partners, and I was invited into this as well. The other aspect to the quantum communications is quantum superluminal communications. So you're in now time, instant communications. Now, mind you, you can do quantum communications as instant communications, but there's also the QSC, quantum superluminal communications, where you can actually manipulate the time, theoretically speaking. So you could go into negative time, for example. You could go into, say, an hour or 2 hours ahead of time, the future.
Is that what's on your Space Exploration Limited website? There was a statement about better than real-time communication. Is that what you're referring to?
I wasn't actually, no. I have to be very careful, actually, because there's, if you're making statements, you need to back them up. And this whole arena dealing with quantum communications, it's still in its infancy, and there's a certain amount of speculation involved. But I feel that the research our laboratory that we have here, we have been working on quantum communications now since 2018. I have presented this stuff actually at University of Oxford and a few other places in Europe. Nothing in the US, mainly Eastern European, like the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences, in Italy as well. But I've also introduced what I think is an important tool which we've developed and we've tried out, and and anybody can do it. It's you need to train a little bit in it, but using a partnership with nature intelligence. So, in other words, co-creative science. So you're not just have a scientist that's in the mechanistic area, you're bringing in the experiential. So you're setting up this co-creative scientific approach to whatever the project is. So you have a project, whatever that definition is, and then a direction and a purpose, and there's intention behind it. This is more of a scientific, this is actually a scientific approach to it, where, I mean, everybody in the world uses some sort of co-creation of some sort, from a conscious point of view. But in what we did, actually, we actually got the timings on it pretty accurate, when the events would occur, from a co-creative scientific principles, that is. So this is all the metaphysics, Clint. We're bringing into this. I have presented this, as I said before, to others, but they don't understand what we're doing. It's like it passes through, and
It just goes.
yeah, we were realizing that people are not ready for this. Yeah, this is a good few years ago now. Introduced it back in the, I think, as far as the late 90s, but I felt, we're just so far, too many years ahead, I think. But you see, you couldn't get anything published either.
Do you think that's changed? Do you get the sense that that's...
Well, it's funny.
Are we on the cusp maybe of that changing?
I think it was just the last 2 or 3 years, and I could see, I was very happy, actually, there were breakthroughs in the UAP area, or the UFO area, with Leslie Keane's paper. I know Leslie Keane, by the way, from way back. I actually helped her to get her first publication out. She couldn't get it through the Boston. I think it was some publication she was trying to get it, but I managed through my contacts, got it through in Europe. So that was her first publication back in 2000 and 2001.
Oh, wow.
People wouldn't know about this because it was more of a private situation. So actually, I have quite a network around the world of a lot of people behind the scenes. It's like an invisible college, you could say, as Jacques Vallée would say.
Well, I feel like the timing is interesting. It seems like people, as they start to come on board, we have a lot of younger folks who are... Yeah.
I just minimize my thing. Yeah, okay. I can't actually see. Oh, no, I can see you. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't see you up to now because I had my PPTX actually in front of me. So I wasn't too sure what the protocols were.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, what were we talking about?
We're all over the place.
Right,
we're just kind of... the metaphysics. I just get the sense that people are ready for the next level now. There's a lot of young people getting into this conversation that weren't even around in the early 90s, and it's kind of interesting to watch all those folks come on board. And I really got switched onto it in probably 1991, 1992, and that's when I started my journey to try and understand all this. But I get the sense now that people are open to all kinds of possibilities. This is sort of it's stimulating the curiosity of a whole generation of people now. And
yeah, no,
I just hope that we can
right, Clint. Yeah,
illuminate that.
Coming across a lot of young people, and my God, it's amazing. They're so open. It's fantastic. Where all the oldies are like, oh my God, I hope they phase out because they have been a constraint to any progress dealing with this area.
Well, how would you like to handle our chat today? Do you want to follow a particular order? Do you want me to just throw questions at you? I have many. We can do it however is comfortable for you.
I think actually I know that with others, I've given one or two or three interviews back, and I got the impression that people would like to see evidence, and I'm in that position to show evidence as well. And I think actually my background to show that, where I'm coming from, but in a very, very brief way, the history of it's been really incremental in getting to this point in time, because as a scientist I've had to prove a lot of things, but I've had to do it also outside the box to prove it to myself, is this for real or not? So it's been a life of, how should I put it, testing out various things and throwing myself in there to do it. So this is where the hands-on part of it practical side of it that I carry out. So it's not just theoretical. It actually started back in 1989. I was doing some work with the director of one of the institutes here in Ireland, and they were getting a lot of telephone calls from the public over some years about, well, we'll put it this way, lights in the sky that they couldn't understand. And this was predominantly in the southwest of Ireland. And the director himself, Herman von Bellingen was his name, and he knew I had a background not just in astronomy, but also meteorology as well, and atmospheric physics, and also electro-optics. And he said, do you want to do something about this? So I said, yeah, give me all the telephone numbers. And I privately then By the way, this was private work now. This wasn't part of work I was normally doing. But in my spare time, then I met about 20 persons that had witnessed these lights, and I really wanted to find out what were they witnessing. And I was totally confused by the end of 12 months. It didn't make sense at all. Didn't fit anything that I knew. So I decided to, that somebody said, well, have you heard about UFOs? Well, I said, I've read them in the stuff in the papers over the decades. But I said, look, let me have a look at this. So I got on to French, UK, and US databases. These would be computerized databases, and I had to pay for all this material. And then I started studying all these reports from around Europe and North America and South America. And I could see all the common characteristics with what people have been seeing here as well. So I realized that this is a global phenomenon. So from there, I started researching further. I thought the best thing actually for any scientist, which, by the way, any scientist wouldn't do this, but because of the nature of this phenomenon people were witnessing, I thought the best thing is to give workshops to the public in order to induce them actually to meet me after of any, so-called UFOs they witnessed. So I ended up with 150 cases altogether over a 10-year period from 1990 up to 2000. And from that, it gave me a widespread of knowledge as to the different types of UFOs witnessed and experiences. And I didn't expect it was going into the whole consciousness side of it as well, which I was totally unfamiliar with. But I thought if you're going to be real about this, you've got to bring in the whole metaphysics. So back in the mid 90s, I brought that into it, the whole consciousness factor. And I was really interested in people that were witnesses to this, but also were having an experience, and there seemed to be like a psychic component affecting them. So that was around 93, 94. And then I thought, well, this is an intelligence we're dealing with here. It's either external to us or it has interest in people. And I started getting in contact with others regarding this in Europe, but no one seemed to have much information regarding this. So I thought, well, I better explore this further. And I did meet some key people privately that knew about this area, and that was actually helping me to progress this further. So that's where I started, and that's where I was up to the mid 1990s.
What was the initial reaction to you proposing this idea and trying to bring forward metaphysics as an area of inquiry here?
Well, I didn't actually bring in metaphysics within the arena to do with the academic community, but what I did do is I wanted to look at all the data to see if one hypothesis I was putting forward was that we may have a monitoring program going on. And I was very inspired by Professor James MacDonald in the US, who was a chief meteorologist, I think, one of the universities in the US, I think in Texas. And he had presented at the US Congress in hearings in 1968, I think it was. And he came to the conclusion in 1968 that we're dealing with some sort of monitoring program. So it was actually thanks to him that I looked into this further. Now, I mean, I wasn't around to see that presentation. I was only a young fella then. But that left me really interested further, because obviously he wouldn't have wasted his time, spending 2 years with a team looking into all this. So yeah, that's how the monitoring program came about, and it was actually thanks to him and another person I met as well, who because I'd written some articles for a journal which I suspected that the UFOs were using some sort of pattern around the Earth, not just around the Earth, but possibly actually within the solar system as well. So actually, somebody else actually had seen my articles on this, an aerospace engineer in the UK, and we met up for a whole week to see how we could actually follow through further on it. So yeah, so that's where the transition into the um, possible patterns came about. So I actually started researching this further, and thanks to my colleague at the time, who was an aerospace engineer, he was able to use some very good computers at the time. Um, this was unofficial work, you can imagine, and but that actually helped to work out the patterns, to the phenomena. Mind you, that paper was presented for the very first time at SETI, at what's called OSETI, Optical SETI, in San Jose in 2001. And it caused quite a stir because the SETI community um, were very unhappy what I was coming up with, even though I had all the data on this. Um, and 50% thought I was perpetrating a hoax on the SETI community, and the other 50% thought that I had the data for this. Um, and then I had more problems after trying to get it published, and I nearly had to get a lawyer in the States actually to get this through. But in the end of the day, they I diluted quite a lot of material in the paper, and then eventually, it was published, and that's the 2001 paper. And then around the same time, I was getting no support from anybody in this, and then in Europe, I got some support because they'd heard what about the research I was doing, and then I was invited to the European Space Agency first bioastronomy conference in Frascati in Italy. So there, actually, I presented the same material, but they seemed to warm to it, that there was something in this. So it's been one thing after the other, and I had tried to present further research in this area, particularly bringing in the quantum field into it. But I was also banned from further conferences dealing with SETI. I haven't been banned from the UK SETI Research Network. They seem to be a lot open-minded, I found.
They banned you? Like in an
yeah,
official
official
sense?
banning. Yeah.
Because of what was the thing that caused them to make that decision? That seems really harsh.
Yeah, well, I had two papers. Well, I'll just give you an example of this banning. In 2018, you had the International Aeronautical Federation, which has the annual SETI sessions. And I had two papers for that, which I submitted, for peer review. And actually, the two papers were dealing with quantum communications to do with extraterrestrial civilizations. Um, and also the post-contact protocols, actually how to do it, because you're dealing with instant communications. So you don't have the luxury in SETI where you get a signal and then you can spend 6 months in the Barbados to figure out the message. In this, you have to have something instantaneous. So those I was showing the whole quantum area from a technical point of view, and then leading into that. So about 2 weeks before I was going there, and everything was paid for, accommodation, flights, everything, costing about €2,000, it's, and then I got out of the blue this email. The committee have reviewed your papers and it has been decided that you're not to come to Bremen. And in fact, in block capitals on the email, it said, "Dear Eamonn, please do not come to Bremen." And I thought, right, okay, well that says it all. So
you were freaking people out with your.
Yeah, well, I think I probably didn't realize that I seem to be a threat to a lot of people, over the decades. So
That's really interesting. That
yeah,
it's kind of not, I don't want to say calcified, but that people are so set in their systems of looking at this that they don't want to entertain other options.
yeah. I mean, on the first one I did in 2001, in San Jose, they at the last day you have a panel, with a number of people there, and you do have the opportunity, Clint, to go up the aisle, with to ask to put some comments or questions or whatever. So I went up the aisle like two or three other scientists, and I made sure I had 41 references for this, and without UFOs put into it, because I used a different language. I used AOP, it was called, Anomalous Observational Phenomena, instead of UFOs. I thought, well, the language is important in this, and that's the way I put it over actually in the actual presentation. So anyway, when I went up there, in walking up the aisle, and then my turn to speak, and I told the panel, I said, look, I believe there's well, not believe, but I understand that there's a problem with my paper I presented. I do have 41 references to support this. And this really got them annoyed. And I can't mention names because it's, there's some of them are well-known people, all right? And you probably say, oh, yeah, I know, that person. Yeah, well, some of the well-known people actually, well, one of them in particular came down to me and more or less brushed my elbow, like it's like really annoyed, And then the chairman came down just as they were finishing, and he said, "Eamonn, look, we have a problem with your paper." And I said, "Well, I have no problems at all with it. Do you want the, So it caused quite a stir, after, and you can imagine.
So, if correct me if I'm wrong here, but just for our audience who I've been following what you're doing for about a year now, and I feel like I've got a fairly decent handle on the idea. I'm going to try to summarize it for the audience, but you're more or less suggesting that you're saying your research can demonstrate that that at least some percentage of UAPs that are being cited are following some kind of predictable orbital track system, and there's a way that could be used to anticipate when and where sightings may occur. Is that accurate?
That was the original research and the paper presented. But when it came to the experimentation of this, which has been tried out in a number of countries, different locations, it has failed in some areas. And I was, and in other areas it worked. So we really can't say that it's a prediction. What we can say, it's windows of opportunity when these events may occur, and they may not occur, and in some instances they don't occur. So this is why I had to review the theory again, and it's only in the last year and a half. Year and a half. That I reviewed it again, actually, because at the time I had very little reports to deal with. It wasn't like now.
Yeah.
You have databases now which are amazing, where back in those days in the 90s, there was in total you might have about, about 30,000 reports worldwide. But now you have, wow, you're going to 500 million.
Well, there's so many different ways, directions I want to take this in. You've talked about, I want to get into the orbital tracks and what that could mean. I'm curious though, do you think, in your assessment, based on your research, Do you think we're dealing with one NHI, multiple different types of NHI at different levels of advancement? Are you seeing any indication of that would clue you into how many different types of beings we're actually observing?
Well, with all the research I've done since 1990 with all this, that it appears that we're dealing with multiple, we'll call them civilizations or multiple groups. There seems to be groups working in concert with each other. And they all have, there's different agendas here taking place. I mean, there is a sort of a more predominant common agenda going on to do with, okay, in the monitoring of the Earth, if you apply what's called the zoo hypothesis, that is now monitoring the Earth, rather like analogous to, say, an anthropologist looking at a new tribe in the distance, but the tribe doesn't see the anthropologist. So this is where the prime direction comes in. So it's a slow process actually before you make the contact, so that they're, happy and acceptable about it, so to speak. I've also introduced beyond the zoo hypothesis what I call the laboratory hypothesis. And you can prove the laboratory hypothesis. It's an extension of the zoo hypothesis. By, for example, where you have the correlation between nuclear silos and the UFOs turning up, and then and also intervening as well with the nuclear silos, where the missiles are, either stopping them or whatever. And it's not just in the US, as you probably know, but also in Russia as well. So the point I'm trying to make is that I don't think, I think the agenda behind the non-human intelligence is not just to do with us. I think it's the whole Earth. They're monitoring. It's everything. So you could say that, well, I suppose it's true that we're like a big organism, as a planet with this, the whole thinking layer behind it, the consciousness side. And it's, you could say it's like, I don't know what the right word is, like taking care of the situation, like that, wherever there's an imbalance, it's not just human beings that may be imbalanced due to the way things have evolved in the populations and societies and communities, but there's also balance there as well. Nature knows nothing else but balance, and even the universe knows nothing else but balance. But where we are, there's imbalances taking place. And I think this is what we're of significant interest, by these non-human intelligence, and possibly originally from extraterrestrial civilizations as well. So that's my take on it.
So your thinking now is that it may not necessarily be that we are the center, the main character, humans, in this, that it's possibly the biodiversity of the entire planet that is of interest, and we are just a player in this. Is that fair to say?
Yes, no, that's my opinion now. I mean, I can't prove it, but from all the research I've done, that seems to be the case.
That would make sense, right? I mean, if you have if you look out into space and you see mostly lifeless, empty space and planets, and then you have this one little island of diversity and biodiversity, and it's just bursting with life, it seems like that would be something worth monitoring. I'm curious how the research that you've done, can you talk about the data that you were able to collect on predicting when and where these things would appear? And can you kind of walk us through what that research looked like and kind of where you're at today?
Okay, well, the old research that I was doing was based on anything from a CE1 to a CE4, close encounters. And I would have taken the best cases at the time during the mid 90s, where you'd have these close encounters all around the world, that is. And it was from that I was hypothesizing that we may have a global monitoring program going on. But how do you have to sort of test out theories, like developing a program that may fit where all these CE cases take place, and the timings. The timings are so important where an event takes place. So it's quite a complex one to do. So it was from that actually that I thought, well, there may be not just the program, but it may be well organized. And in organizing it, one of the little breakthroughs was that the whole operation is synchronized with the rotation of the Earth. So if you can imagine, you have rings around the Earth, but they're actually synchronized with the 24 hours. It's not like, where we're using sending up satellites and relying on gravity of the Earth for a satellite to revolve. In this case, I think they're using this process, or this methodology, I mean. But there's a lot of guesswork in this, you can imagine, because no one else is working on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you write a paper and then someone else to see and say, well, where's the foundation behind this? So it's like, you're sort of all by yourself doing this, So I don't know if I've answered your question there, but I as I said, I had to review all this again because it wasn't working for for me. In some cases, it was, and so it's unfortunate that there was no others doing this kind of work that you could get feedback on.
Can you talk a little bit about how this might differ, say, from I understand Avi Loeb's group at Harvard is working on the Galileo project, and they're trying to get high resolution optical data on sightings and that type of thing. Is this what you're looking at is a completely different thing? Yes.
Oh yeah, this is bringing it to the next step. This is when the Galileo project, okay, I know where they're coming from. It's an astrophysical approach, which is right. It's the proper thing to do, of course. What they're actually missing is, actually put it, they're trying to prove that something that's already discovered, in my estimation, because you really have to go back on all the thousands of reports,
mm-hmm.
and you'll see that there's common features, there are common characteristics. So I'm sort of at a loss why they're doing it that way. And also, they're not even using spectroscopy either, which is the main tool of an astronomer. Because I don't know if you know, but in spectroscopy, you can understand the composition behind the actual construct picked up, assuming it's emanating light, giving off emissions. So that was surprising, their design of their instrumentation. Is it the same as what I'm trying to do? Well, I've actually already done that. I actually designed and developed a whole detection system, which is here at the observatories, and because you have to discriminate between all natural and conventional detections, which one was able to do. So we ended up with about 40, you could say, UFOs that are common characteristics over 20 years roughly. So it's quite rare to pick these up. So I picked up orbs.
That's so fascinating, and I'm curious about this aspect of your work, because it seems like we should have a really Given the amount of sightings that people report, it seems like we're constantly surrounded by craft that are just zipping around, either completely invisible to us or cloaked in some way or somehow masked from our detection. But it also seems like we've gotten so much better at looking for things that we should have a pretty robust system for detecting these craft by now. Do you think are we approaching a point? You said you've developed some methodologies yourself. Are we getting to a point where we're going to be able to just see these things? When I say things, I mean just craft in general, and then more specifically, there seems to be so many different types of craft doing different things. Orbs, of course, flying discs, different configurations. We see cigar-shaped craft that you've referred to in your own work from time to time. Can you talk a little bit about the different types of craft that are seen and how those are detected, and what your thoughts are on where this goes from here?
Yeah, I mean, the work I've been carrying out here has been similar to Estelin, which you had previous interviews with Erlin Strand and Fred Pollison. The Estelin is actually identical, or shall I say, the such similarities to what we've been detecting. But also what I'm doing I'm not under a what's the word, an academic establishment. I'm doing this. This is under a company or corporation dealing with space communications. But so over the period, we've invested in this because it's something that needs to be explored as to the physics behind this. So I don't know if that's the right answer for you, but we have detected not just the orbs, but also constructs. When I say constructs, I mean they appear as cylindrical objects or triangular objects. And we've actually got videos of these. And I can show you a sample of these, actually,
I would love to see if you've got them queued up. We could take a look at them in this call, or you could send them to me later and we can drop them in.
Okay. The only problem is it better not be PDF, because if it's PDF, you won't be able to see the films or the videos because of the high storage rate needed. But I can actually show them in the presentation. I have them there.
Oh, okay. Well, when we get to that, we can go through those.
Sure.
I think what I'm driving at in broad strokes is that it seems like, of course, the American military and intelligence apparatus has enormous, practically unlimited resources. We can be fairly certain that they have methodologies in place to track these objects as they do their thing around the Earth. And we've heard enough rumors that these are being routinely brought down and recovered to be reverse engineered. And I'm just wondering, like, how far behind is the civilian research world? It seems like if we're waiting for disclosure to come from the United States government, we'll be waiting forever. I don't think that's ever going to happen. What people seem to be really hungry for is, let's just get on with it in the civilian world. Perhaps there's a way that civilian scientists can just start to solve these problems if we could just get enough resources on it and enough minds on it. And I'm just wondering, has, in your estimation and your experience, that with the people that you have dealt with, is there a coherent, cohesive effort to try and decipher the types of signatures that can be observed, or is this sort of a scattered effort that's spread out among many different researchers, just doing like you're doing with your own company, and then Avi's got his thing going on over at Harvard? Is there any kind of system in place to organize all this together, or is it just all over the map?
Well, as you say, in America, it's all over the map. Yeah, I haven't come across coherence in this whole area because it's so diverse what researchers are doing, and it's difficult to they're either, for example, the French, Japan, again, it's methodologies that are not taking into account the larger reality. I actually have looked at other organizations and researchers, and I mean, yeah, I did join SKU. Felt could make some contribution there. But when you look at some of the UFO organizations over the decades, it's all mechanistic. They're not taking in the larger reality, except Jacques Vallée when he came out with his book Passport to Magonia there back in 1970, I think it was. Yeah,
Eamonn, can you take a minute and explain the larger reality from your vantage point? When you say the larger reality and you incorporate metaphysics into this, can you just give us some atmospherics on what that means so that people who aren't familiar can understand where you're coming from?
Okay. Well, up to the 1820s, 1830s, metaphysics was accepted and used. That is, what is it? You're dealing with the reality, everything around you, from how do I put it? It's sort of bringing in all. It's like you're dealing with nature and the reality in nature. Nature itself is intelligent. Every single item on this planet is intelligent. Like the mouse that I use for my laptop here, that's intelligent. It's just a form. But there's intelligence behind it. And I don't mean in a synthetic way intelligence. I'm talking about in a natural way, that this is all part of nature. So I'm only just touching on this now, but that's part of the metaphysics that we're talking about. But if you're talking about just physics, it's just the materialistic side of it. Okay, I know there's a crisis in physics, and then you have the quantum physics, which you can prove many things in quantum physics, but never the twain shall meet. So yeah, so that's the only. It's not a criticism, I suppose, of what organizations are doing. It's just where they're at, but they're not bringing in metaphysics. You need metaphysics in order to spearhead this and make the breakthroughs.
Would it be fair to say, to characterize this, your point, as there's the physics that can explain what we see, and there's the science that we know and understand, but that's only explaining a fraction of what there is. And you're talking about in the totality, in the grand totality of reality, there are things that are implied by our observations or suggested to be there, but we can't necessarily prove them. But you're saying that's where the research needs to go. We have to start to move in those directions to understand and answer these questions that haven't been answerable so far. Is that a fair assessment?
That's correct, yes.
So with regard to the metaphysical aspect of this, you talk in your work about contactees, people who have experiencers, people who have had experience. You mentioned quantum communication with individuals and with craft. Can you expand on this idea a little bit more and talk about sort of the practical reality of what the metaphysics mean for you?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you some examples of some of the research going back to the mid-1990s or the late 1990s. This would be private research with individuals that would be interested in this. If where we're coming from as with society, the way it's evolved, there's a situation where it's an us and them situation with anything that's around, and that's the wrong approach. It should be integral, and for example, if I'm sure some of your audience will be familiar with this, but if you're dealing with, say, the CE5 initiative, which I was familiar with way back, that it's only bringing in okay, I mean, you can summon up orbs,
Yeah.
but the thing is, there's a resonance factor here you have to take consideration in consciousness. The right resonance will actually equate, or should I say, the frequency you're operating at, that's what you're going to attract. So you're falling into the whole paranormal arena here to some degree. The only criticism I have of the C5 is that you don't know what you're bringing in. You're asking for this, but so there's actually no partnership with whatever it is out there. So the first thing you have to do is you have to set up a partnership with nature intelligence. That's everything. That's the whole universe. And there's no boundaries in this at all because it's rather like analogous to, okay, if you're, say, manifesting something. So by going through a partnership with nature intelligence, it's rather like having a carpenter out there that's making this up for you. And then it manifests itself. So when you're dealing with the whole UAP area, I feel, as I say, it's my own opinion, but you need to go through this partnership with nature intelligence in order to deal with this. So you could actually set up, which we did do actually way back. We set up a, how shall I put it, a date in the future where we defined in the project that we wanted to see a UFO. All right. And anyway, there were 6 of us actually that did this back in 90. It was February. Let me think now. I think it was February '98. And we through this partnership with Nature Intelligence, we got a number of items that we had to do. I mean, you could use kinesiology in this as a means of connecting, with your electrical system and also, nature itself, because nature, you could say, is a partner in this, but if you're leaving it out, then nothing works. So we ended up actually getting a specific date and time when this event may occur. And as I said, this is nothing to do with meditation now. Yeah, I know there's all sorts of methodologies for doing this, or you're putting out the thought process for that you want to, have a UFO experiences, I suppose. In this case, we were doing it differently, where we ended up actually with the location where we had to go, and the what I thought was a satellite appearing turned out to be a UFO. The reason that we could prove it was that one of the party within the group sent a mental focus using an infinite sign as a symbol to the actual UFO that we think is a UFO. And over a period of 2 minutes, an interaction took place with the UFO where it started slowly doing the figure eight in the sky over a 2-minute period, and then some clouds came over. But it actually confirmed to us that the UFO was intelligent, but also was interacting with us. So,
do you differentiate between, an orb, a physical craft like a metallic disc that supposedly crashes and gets recovered by people and hauled off in a truck and taken to a research center? And are we dealing, is this representative of the same phenomenon, or are we looking at multiple different phenomenons and we're not exactly sure who we're talking to or what we're saying?
Yeah, we're dealing with a different category in the phenomena. When you're dealing with orbs, orbs in the strict sense of where there appear to be the UFOs. I mean, there are other types of orbs, which I've seen. Ball lightning is an orb. That's quite rare. That's different to these other orbs that people see. And I actually have a paper which was co-authored by others just to let you know, Clint, that came out last year, just literally 12 months ago, dealing with plasmoids in outer space. All right. And that's that has a state of matter in it that has an intelligence behind it. It's nothing to do with craft and the flying saucers and craft. That's different category. So just to try and answer your question there, so you have to separate the orbs from the craft. But that's my opinion anyway, because the construct is quite different. The craft to an orb.
I think that's where people are. At least for me, I find that fascinating and confusing, because you have an orb that appears to be a non-physical, sort of a ball of plasma, like you said, light that could behave more like an animal in a sense, and then we've got what we suspect are physical craft with an actual civilization behind them, with a technological society that's producing these craft. They have machinery to make them and manufacture them and distribute them and do the different things. And I think what I'm driving at is, how do we know who we're talking to? And do you foresee a point in maybe the near future or the next, say, 100 years where we can actually reach out and make contact and get a meaningful dialogue back and forth going, and get past this sort of foggy area that we're in right now, where no one's really sure what's going on, but we can all agree there's something going on? Does that make sense? Am I making sense there?
No, it does actually, and in fact, it can be done in a very short. It can be done in our lifetime, in a really short time. But it's to know how to do it. I'm not saying I have all the answers to that. I'm just keep experimenting and then getting confirmation, if there is confirmation, that works. So in my research, I work on an incremental basis, and I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm quite optimistic that we can do all this in our lifetime. And I will be showing actually some stuff in the presentation, how it's done.
Well, maybe we could take a look at the presentation now, and this might be a good opportunity to dig into that.
Okay, I'll have to sum it up. I have to go to share, don't I? Okay, here we go. Oh, there it is. Is that it? Oh, here it is. Sorry. Yeah, here it is. Yeah. So, is that showing up at all? Oh, it's not.
I've got the UAP and NHI research screen that was up before. That's still up.
Oh, okay. We've got to try it again. Oh, I see. Yeah, that's I have to share that bit. Forgot to press the button there. Yeah, it should come up now. Oh, okay. That must be there now. Yeah. Is that it? Do you see it now, Clint?
I see your cursor moving around. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But do you see the screen with the first slide?
Black screen with a purple bar at the top. Yeah, and it says Kingsland Observatory, ICER, SETI, Kingsland.
Oh, yeah. Great. Shall I have this as full screen, or leave it as it is, or?
What happens if you go full screen? Let's see.
Okay. So I just push that there. Yeah. Okay, it should be there now. There you go.
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, lovely. Great. Okay, so so what do you want to do? I'll just briefly go through this, if you wish, and because it leads in. This is incremental. It's from one thing to the other. Little bit of
just
history,
walk us through it at your own pace, and I'll jump in with questions as we go.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Yeah. You've got to let me know what you want. Yeah. Well, this is the contents anyway. It's the UAP research I go into, and that leads into instrumented UFO research, and then that leads into UAP as technosignatures, and then I go into conscious contactees. That's different to unconscious contactees, and then I go into global NHI communications. Actually, I'm being blocked here. I must be a way of closing this down. Oh, okay. So that's the history. So 1990, so 100 pages altogether. This gave me an appreciation of, anything from CE1 to CE4. And then 95, is there a global UFO pattern? So I wrote some articles, then started doing the research on this, and was convinced that we're dealing with a monitoring program, which has a pattern behind it. And then 2000, designed and developed instrumentation to detect UFOs. So that's that. Oh yeah. So just where I am. I'm in Western Europe. I was going to say little island compared to the US, called Ireland. That's in green there. It's a very green country, by the way. If ever you've been to Ireland, it's lush with green here. We'll put it that way. And so these are satellite images, of course. This is just one of the examples of one of the areas where there's been high frequency of activity in the southwest of the country. I called it the Cumhola Corridor because of the frequent UFOs showing up, different types. This is just dots where UFO events have occurred over the period. I mean, although it was predominant in this area, I did discover that there were other areas of the country which were active as well. One of the areas actually I found out was a place called Loch Key in County Roscommon, which had a high frequency of UFOs turning up. So I met a lot of people in that area, and indeed was actually taking a serious decision to actually relocate and establish detection systems there. So my work has been mainly detection systems, detecting the UFOs, and then analyzing them as well, which I will be showing here. So we're trying to find out the physics behind this. Energy fields, spectra for determining the composition of UFOs, magnetic and gravitational fields, radio frequencies, audio bands, and that. So that was the approach way back in 2000. It's sort of similar to Galileo, but in this case, I would have met a lot of people that would have had experiences with UFOs. And I've recorded all this. It has come out in publications back in the past. So there is, in comparing, say, with another area like Hesteland in Norway, whom I've worked with the guys over the years, Erlend Strand and Massimo Teodorani. We do have similar plasma orbs that are moving around, constructs of different shapes, cylindrical, disc, and triangular shaped craft, paranormal effects. It seems to be like a part and parcel of the encounter when it takes place. We use the name paranormal, but it's probably normal.
Have you ever? We hear a lot about spheres, metallic spheres. Do you ever encounter spheres in your observations?
I have actually. This is through others. We haven't detected spheres. Shape, that is. I mean, when I show you some of the images that we've detected, you'll see that, yes, it looks like a sphere, but it's also emanating this plasma around the construct itself. So we have recorded these, and I'll be able to show you them as well. We've also recorded some rare shapes, like a dumbbell type shape, which I don't know what that means, but there was only a once off. So it was really good been in Hestelin and meeting others that have also seen similar to what we've been seeing here, or have recorded as well. Some of the recordings in Hestelin, although they have witnessed discs and triangular shaped craft, they've never actually recorded them with their cameras there. However, some of the scientists like Massimo Teodomani and the Italian team have witnessed the triangular shaped craft. But there is a problem for scientists when an event does occur, because it seems to change the environment around oneself on an unconscious basis. And this was told to me by Dr. Massimo Teodomani. It did affect all the other team when something like this actually happens.
Are you referring to the paranormal effects?
Yes, paranormal effects, difficulty of integrating the reality when it actually happens. It seems to emanate, you could say, something on the brain. Massimo Teodomani did some research further using probes on persons' brains at Hestelin. What he found actually is that people became more depressed when the event happened, and also in groups he found people getting rather depressed, and it's creating an imbalance, in people when the event occurs.
That's really interesting. Are you familiar with the Immaculate Constellation document that was submitted to Congress late last year? Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
It's a document that claims that there is a parent program within the American military intelligence apparatus that is called Immaculate Constellation, that oversees all of these other UAP programs. And one interesting piece of information that was in this report, it's about a 12-page document, but they talk about the effects, that's the most commonly cited objects and the effects reported by people near those objects. And with regard to spheres in particular, they talk about a sense of unease. People in the presence of one of these objects, they report feeling really weird, creepy, a sense of unease, and it's just very, very similar to what you just described. And I'm wondering if you could expand on that a little bit. Some of the mental effects that people report.
Yeah. Well, I can only go on the 150 cases that I did. What I found fascinating, it seemed to be, okay, each individual, depending on the level of growth they're at, that's when they do, say, have a sighting or a very close-up sighting, right up to even a CE4, it not only creates instability, but I found if you have a disparity between the human being and the UFO, it's not going to be good for them. Meaning, if you're not resonating with the UFO, you end up either getting depressed, or you're denying the event that's taken place, and you actually get ill. And I've actually come across this, where in other instances you have people that are less baggage in their system, well, far less, seem to be empathic, and it's a much better type of event for them when it happens, So it depends actually on the level of growth, your resonance you're at for this to happen. If you're denying all this beforehand, you're skeptical, you're going to have a very hard time when the event occurs after. That's why I discovered in the research. By the way, I'm not a psychologist. I had to write all this down, realizing, there's a lot more to this. It's not just physics here. I have to deal with people in the psychology them. So,
It's
and
so
I mean, I
confusing, isn't
did.
it? Don't you
Yeah,
find
I
it?
did go to
It's
one of
frustrating.
the.
It's like trying to grab onto fog or something. You can't. It's like you want it to be a craft with a pilot and a crew, and then it lands and they get out, and you say hello, and we give the. And there's a dialogue, and then we want to approach this as a. I think the instinct is to think of it like contacting any other culture or group that would be more or less at our level, and yet there are so many effects that are just beyond our understanding that seem to interfere with that process and make it much more complicated. What's your take on that?
Yeah,
How do you, as a scientist who looks at things, you're data driven, you're focused on the actual methodology of the research. How do you account for all of the strangeness, the high strangeness around this?
well, I think it's mainly due to the imbalance of the humans in the interaction. So the imbalance meaning that there's other hard beliefs there, you could say, that are as part of the package, and this is a real problem for when an event occurs. I sort of wondered at times, well, why would the UFO and the craft, target to an individual over there, and if they have all those problems, and I have come across that, and then of course I've come across some amazing people, by the way, it's not just in Ireland, but in South America,
Sure.
I've gone that far, and where there's an interesting evolution for the human where it's quite natural for them actually to have the encounter because they've already got what's the word, a personal link to the extraterrestrials, the non-human intelligence that they're dealing with, and I think that's actually really important for spearheading the scientific research. These are quite rare individuals. I would call them conscious contactees as compared to unconscious contactees. This would be dealing with, say, the abductions, and well, even there's a whole big category of people that are unconscious. I think it's the majority of people to some degree when it, when these events occur that they're because they've had no education in this area, you could say, well, that is the fact. Then it's problematic, for a lot of them, But if there was education in this area, I think it'd be a lot more easier transition to have encounters. So
I think it's. I want to get into your thoughts on abductions because I think experiencers seem to represent a group of people that have firsthand knowledge of what we're dealing with, at least in some sense, right? These are people who have ostensibly been on board craft and seen the interior and encountered the beings in their regular setting and have some information about what is going on there. But we'll come back to that. Please carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just curious about your thoughts on that.
sorry, I was rambling on there because I wasn't too sure.
Oh, not at all.
A lot of this is unscripted,
Go for it. No,
So,
keep rambling. This is great.
So what do you want me to say? Oh, sorry, what's your question? I can't remember them.
Oh, I'm just kind of spitballing with you about the different types of the different effects on individuals. You have
Oh yeah.
between the orbs and the craft and all the various different effects. And then you have people who claim to be contactees, people who claim to be abductees. The people who are abductees talk about very specific things like I was on board a craft. I saw an 8-foot tall praying mantis. Well, that's really hard to, that's different than I saw a light behaving erratically or I saw a strange orb that I couldn't quite explain. And now we're getting into some really deep speculation on what do these things look like? What do they, how do they work with us? And I'm just, so I'm just spitballing with you on that, but carry on with the presentation, please. And I'll just jump in from time to time.
Oh, actually, just on the abductions, I had a few hours with Professor John Mack back in May 1994. This is before the Zimbabwe case came up, and I was presenting good evidence for John Mack at the time. Privately, this was for, actually put it, an abduction case, but there was a physical side to it, because that's what he was looking for. Because, you can't put cameras in people's heads, to try and get the evidence. So I thought I'd just mention that to you.
What's your sense of Mr. Mack's work and his contribution?
Well, it was a necessary one to address because that's all part of the wide reality. He did ask me in '94. I think he wrote his first book. It was just come out, and we had a few hours together. And he asked me, "What is this all about, Eamonn?" I said, "I know what this is about. And what it is, it's an imbalance in the universe. We're actually imbalanced in this, and that's why these entities, I wouldn't call it abductions, I would call it a detainment to actually put it, or to go through that experience in order to wake up to a larger reality in life and their growth."
So there's a performative aspect to it, in a sense, right? Like
that's my opinion. That's my opinion. But look, I may be wrong, but I'm just trying to, when I was with John Mack, he asked me. He was doing this kind of work, right? But to ask me what did I think it was all about, that's what I told him. And then he said, "That's amazing." He said, right at the end of his book, he said, "Read that out. It's all due to the imbalance of the earth."
That's really fascinating, because that ties back to the Zimbabwe case and the children, the message that they received, and it's
the environment.
Almost,
yeah. You can go back to the 1880s, and there's 110 school cases, and certainly the non-human intelligence makes sure that they're on the outskirts. They're not going to, freak out the children. They're innocent, and they're easily, provided a message to them in different ways. I only studied one case there back in before I was going to the UFO area, because I was so curious. I was on holidays, but I went to the place in Broadhaven in Wales, where the school actually had an encounter there with the craft and the persons that came out of it.
And what was your impression of that visit when you made it?
Well, it was quite scary because I was very new to the whole scene, and I was just doing it privately, meeting some of the individuals, the hotel owner and stuff like that. But there seemed to be like a whole paranormal effect to the whole thing, which I wasn't too familiar with the paranormal. But it was, I think what you find is that this is part of the spin-off from the encounters, this whole paranormal effect. I only discovered it when I was doing the case studies, investigations, and I thought, gosh, this is interesting. You can't rule it out. It's there. So you have to allow that as part of the reality of this.
When you say paranormal effect, what specifically leaps out at you?
Well, you'd have a whole range of aspects to the paranormal. You'd have manifestations of things to as if I should put it. This is this is a complex one, because even with the UFO event taking place and you have this paranormal effect, that's an effect that we've defined that is paranormal, but it doesn't mean, if you separate the paranormal, nothing to do with UFOs at all, then you do have a real effects which are called paranormal. You know, that could be manifestations of things. That could be using what do they call it? Electronic transceivers. You know, for picking up dead people and so forth. Which I don't think they're doing. That's another story in itself. But yeah, I think it's just space-time shifting taking place, and that there's a narrow veil between the two dimensions where these things happen. Heston is a very good example of that. You know, Heston, you can have entities appearing, walking around the road, which have been seen by people.
Right. That's what I think I'm driving at. Are the paranormal effects that we see and seem to associate with the UFO UAP phenomenon, in your view, just spitballing here, are those sort of residual after effects of a particular type of technology that takes advantage of aspects of quantum physics that we presently don't understand? Or, you know, the conversation here in the States right now is angels or demons? Are we, which are we dealing with? Is it some kind of, you know, supernatural phenomenon that we're tying to UFOs, but maybe in fact those things are not directly related. They're just associated with one another.
Yeah, so well, they're associated with it. This is what I was saying about the paranormal effects with the UFO because of the characteristics that it's made up of. Where, you know, this the craft could well be some sort of Alcubierre type of propulsion system, which has screening around it, creating all sorts of space-time distortions and everything. And of course, you know, things like that in close range would affect people because they're assuming they're in a balanced situation. They don't want, you know, space-time shifting around. There's an imbalance, you could say, to that, you know, so it affects people's brains and so forth.
I see. So the actual the imbalance in space time and the imbalance caused by the use of their technology in proximity to people could actually just be affecting their brain state, their actual biochemical situation.
Yes.
In other words, it's not a spiritual phenomenon. It can be reduced down to something physical that's happening as a result of that technology being in proximity.
Yeah,
Fair?
but see, it's all. Yes, I agree with you. But it's all coming back to this separation that we have with nature, and that I think you know, the intelligence is well aware of the situation going on, and how do you bring the imbalance back to balance? And I think one of the ways that they've been working on for decades is through intervention, as we explained earlier on. You know, the nuclear correlation, you know, silos, and also I think the abductions as well that have taken place, or detainments, is part of that to balance people out in their life. So I mean, you may be talking about millions of cases around the world dealing with the abductions, but you also have to look where it's taking place. You know, these abductions. You know, it's in areas, locations where you have a confusion of consciousnesses, so to speak. You know, it's like when you go into a city and, you know, depends if you live in one or not, but you can tell the confusion of consciousness if you're that sensitive to it. And because consciousness is the key factor with the UFO, that's what I think it's all about. That we have to bring in consciousness to this. You know. It's a big subject. This, you know, it can be quite complex.
It's so hard to even begin. It's like, where do you take your first step? You don't even. It's so difficult to grab onto anything. There's so much to chew on here. Well, let's continue on with the presentation, and then
sure,
we'll diverge as needed.
Okay, so I'll just bring it up again and share. So it should come up. Gosh, it's not there. I thought it might be there.
I've got the comparative analysis slide is what I'm looking at here.
Oh, I don't see it at all. Let's see. Oh, I'm having a problem here.
Might be at the top of your Zoom window. There may be a tab for your screen share.
Your screen share. That's slide control, show meeting. Done that. Well, it should be.
On my Zoom window, I have
comparative analysis. Yeah,
there it is. Yep.
Yes. Oh, there it is. Thank you. That's great. Yeah. So following on from there, then we go to well, in the control center here, which is using fairly old technology because it was 2000 vintage at the time. But anyway, I'll just get on to. I'll just go through this very quick, but it's an all-sky camera system using multiple cameras and two tracking platforms, which are linked to the 11 cameras here, and then using a multiplexer. If a UFO shows up, say on one of the, if the UFO shows up on one of the 11 cameras, then it triggers the other platforms which are cameras anyway, but they've got zoom lenses, so to speak. So it's that's just a bit of a close up on some of the facilities.
Can you go back? I'm sorry. Can you go back to that previous slide? Really?
Yeah.
So 200 millimeter zoom lenses, 20 meters off the ground.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. Sony sensors. How many different, so this is this one cluster of cameras. You have 11 cameras in this sensor cluster. How many clusters like this are there?
There's only one cluster made up of 11 cameras. You have 10 cameras which have segmented the celestial dome at 36 degrees apart. And then you have the one camera vertically looking at the zenith. So that covers the whole sky. The reason why there's so many cameras is because you get better resolution. If you use an old just one camera, resolution is problematic, I think, in what you're trying to do. You really need to have good sensors. At the time, year 2000, we installed WATEC type Sony sensors and lenses.
So this,
and then
this equipment set up the way that it is gives you a full, complete dome view of the observable sky at high resolution with built-in tracking for anything anomalous that appears in that sphere.
That's correct. The two tracking platforms, which are interfaced at a distance, they're 150 meters apart. This is to give you triangulation when the UFO appears, so you can get the distance.
Okay.
So the two tracking platforms can only be triggered by the 11 cameras. If one of them sees a UFO, we'll say, and it's moving, then in that square of that program, it will actually, the one platform will start moving to that position where one of the cameras of the 11 has picked it up. And then will actually, depending on one or many of the cameras of the 11, will start following the actual object and recording, of course. So it's a bit different to Hastelin, where they're using, going back to the 90s, I think they were just using the one or two cameras from the blue box, that is. In this, it's a bit different, the approach.
Yeah. I feel like this would be really helpful in Hastelin, something like this.
So shall I keep going on, or?
Carry on. Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the two tracking platforms. There was some additional detectors I wanted to put on. There was two gamma ray directional detectors. which are piggybacking on two of the tracking platforms. But we never got any results at all because any UFOs that did turn up, they were at a distance and there just wasn't enough signal to noise ratio to give you a detection of gamma rays. Near infrared I've used, it's a near infrared camera. It's been used. What else? Spectroscopy is so important. And we have a small team. There's another two colleagues of mine who work with me on this. So I actually had designed and developed a new spectrograph back in the year 2003 because I was realizing, when you're taking a spectra of an object, it has to go through a slit. That's the light from the object. But how do you deal with a UFO that's moving around? It's impossible to actually to record. So I actually designed a spectrograph that had a scanning slit in it, and that there is a published paper for that. And then Hestelin are very interested actually in developing this. What I did here, it actually addressed that issue where you can use spectroscopy. It's unfortunate some of the other organization like the Galileo project and I think UPX are not using spectroscopy, maybe because of the difficulty of detecting a UFO and getting spectra behind it. There is another. Okay, that's the testing the new tracking spectrograph at our place here. Then we also came up with probably a simpler form of spectroscopy, and that's using a slit-free spectrograph. So there's no slit there, and that one really works beautifully. So we actually developed that, and it's actually on the picture on the bottom left where three of us are there. You can see the cylinder on top of the bigger camera. And that's the slitless spectrograph that we're trying to apply. So I have presented and published some of this stuff back many years ago, how it can be done. These are just some tests we did way back. We never actually detected a UFO and get spectra from it. We haven't done that one. That would be the creme de la creme if we could do that one. So that's just testing out. It gives people some idea that when, say, objects on the right appear, you can get a spectra. You're like 1, 2, and 3. You can see 1, 2, 3. The spectra that's fully enhanced now. That one. You need medium resolution at least for getting.
And what that spectra information helps us determine what specifically?
The composition of the UFO. What is it made up of? So
would you be able to detect that or get usable data if they had some type of optical camouflage, or if there was some kind of gravitational effect around the craft that prevented light from bouncing back from it? Are there any, can you imagine, are there any technological effects of their technology that might prevent us from getting usable data or make it invisible?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know where you're coming from, and this is back to the principle of us and them. All right. And what I was saying, that we discovered that you really have to truly set up a partnership with nature intelligence within the definition of what the project is going to be about with the ETI, non-human intelligence, the UFO. And by setting that up, then you therefore have got a partnership with them, not an us and them. In some of the research currently that's been going on, I think in the US and other places, it's still an us and them situation in principle. So it was like what you quite rightly said. It will camouflage itself. It doesn't want us to know more for what we need to know. But if you set up a partnership with them in the true sense, they would then have an understanding that this is for science, not for anything else that we're trying to evolve with this. So that's been my approach in this. I mean, it's quite a unique approach in doing this.
Well, it's interesting because you're, if I'm understanding you right, you're saying prior to the experiment, you're setting up a mental framework internally about, I guess, based on intention for what the experiment is for. And isn't that assuming, you're assuming an awful lot there, right? Like that these beings are actually reading our thoughts, understanding it, applying what, then that they even care what we think. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think people might be a little fuzzy on what you mean by set up a partnership with nature in a larger sense.
In setting up a partnership, with nature, actually, I'll be going into that later on in the slides to explain that.
Sure.
If you want me to, I can do that further on, but I might have to repeat myself, again, as we go further into this. But by setting up a partnership with nature intelligence, you don't have an us and them situation. So when you define the project of what you want to do, now you have to get permission. Now the permission you can go through naturally with your electrical system as a human. So you could use a very simple one, Clint, and that is using kinesiology. Like it's a go or no go, yes or no. So you can go on that basis, and you actually may not get. Look, it's quite possible that we would get permission. We to be a no go, on that. No, that's and it may be a different route. You might think, oh, well, I thought we were going that way with the partnership nation, but actually we end up going a different route. But we may get the result in the end. So there's not a linear. It's not necessarily linear. You're dealing with a combination of non-linear concepts and linear, because ETI and NHI are using non-linear concepts. We also have to do the same. We actually have already got it built into us, non-linear concepts, but we don't seem to realize we have it.
When you say non-linear concepts built in, what do you mean?
I'm actually going. I'll be able to answer your question actually with the slide, because I actually do have slides to show this. If you like.
Sure.
It'd save repeating the whole thing again. Seem to have dropped a bit. Let's see. Is this the one? Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah. Oh crikey! It doesn't seem to. Oh, not showing up. Gosh, what is it?
Did the screen share freeze? Sometimes that happens.
Oh, it does. Oh, there you go. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so we'll go beyond the instrumentation bit, and okay, here's sorry. This is Lock Key, this area where there's a high frequency of UFO activity. It's Lock Key is a lake, a big lake with islands, and that's where we have our instrumentation for picking up for detecting UFOs. So this is just a sample of some of the UFO events that have happened in the red stars that show up in the lake and also outside the lake as well. There are similarities to Hessdalen. Hessdalen has not just the valley, but also a very large lake nearby, and there's events that take place as well. So just zipping through, this is some of the early footage what we got.
Oh wow!
This is a cylindrical type UFO construct, that is, at Lock Key, and that was the first successful one that we got. There was just a team of us. I think there was 5 of us at the time, and
wow.
you have to realize that we're using ancient technology, cameras. What were the, gosh, I can't remember, the videotape type.
Oh, 1997 was pre-HD. This would have been.
Yeah, that's it. Hence the, getting this result. Go on to the next one. Then the next year, by a stroke of luck, there were 3 witnesses to one of these constructs. And I did a lot of research into this one, met the witnesses many times, went through the whole thing. And from that, they actually had witnessed at very close range. When I say very close range, this would be a distance of, say, 100 and I'd say about 100 to 150 yards away, roughly. And the construct was 100 feet in length by 20 feet. And all 3 actually saw this purple haze around the construct itself. As to the lighting, they weren't too sure. They were using binoculars as well. They had real close-up on this. 2 of them started freaking out after a while because they realized, are we meant to be seeing this or not? It's weird for some encounters, what people.
Oh, it's super weird. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's super. Well, I was going to ask you, are you familiar with, there are reports in the past of this cigar-shaped style craft with windows and people can see occupants inside these things. Have you ever run across that in your own research?
Yeah, I've only come across it in cases, not my cases, but others I've studied. I mean, this case, I thought there was similarities at the time to the 1972 case in California, Cisco Hills case, from the point of view of the construct, the shape of it, and the panels, and so forth. This particular case in Lock Key, I determined that these are not lights we're dealing with here. These were anode and cathode type emissions at particular points on the craft. So I sort of estimated they must be using a very powerful source of propulsion in order to, to move around. It was actually descending into the towards the lake. It was coming from the edge towards it. They saw it at a castle, Clun Tequila Castle, which is on the shore. It's a non-occupied castle, and they were there. It's a fairly remotish area, this whole area, when you're there. But they saw it actually descending gradually. It was very slow movement. I think maybe I have this. Maybe I have the velocity here, but it was very slow. Could have been like 10 miles per hour, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, I think 15 miles per hour is what you have.
Yeah, so that's just giving you a flavor of one of the cases that I went into some detail. There were a number of other cases I've gone through, but these are some of the best ones. I think this actually shows the flight path of that craft coming in from the right. And then they said it just disappeared. And this sort of introduced me to possible interdimensional situation, a portal, and that would be to the left there. But they weren't too sure because they were obviously astonished what they were dealing with, And
yeah.
I mean, I've come across people with cameras, and and then when the event happens, they're so astonished. They can't use the camera. They can't remember to use a camera, even though they have an astounding encounter or something. So then we picked up, this would be to the east of Lock Key, a small little town. It's only Boyle, of a triangular construct. And everything, so we managed to get the height and the size of the craft itself. And there was a red beam that came out of it. Now, we only discovered the red beam through the frames, so we had 2 minutes of the duration, but then there was about 3 or 4 frames that showed this beam coming out of one of the apexes of the craft itself. So I think it was doing some sort of scanning in the area, which is a common characteristic, with some of these craft.
90 meters across.
Yeah, well, that was the
Wow.
estimation at that height of 11,000 feet.
90 meters is big. That's big.
These are just a sample of, of what we've recorded.
And this is,
Hestelin has had,
I'm sorry, but just to be clear, this, in your view, is a solid craft. Those three lights are not three separate things that are moving in formation. This is one craft with three lights.
yeah, this is one craft with three lights at the
Got it.
apex, and we determined that through some sophisticated image processing to, get more details on it. But we discovered other things about it as well. But that's just giving you a flavor of some of the stuff has been presented, way back. So this is a common one: lights as orb type light sources. You can see the light profile using photometric analysis below. This is a double orb that we picked up. Normally you see them as single orbs, but we picked up a double orb, which was at Lock Key as well. So we were able to determine the magnitude. That's in astronomy, that is, magnitude, velocity, and stuff like that. And then a photometric profile on it. Then another very unusual one was a rare case of a dumbbell shape moving near Lock Key above these fields. And there is a close-up of this in detail. Definitely shows the two round constructs here, profile of a dumbbell type shape, that was unusual. I've never come across that before.
Is there anything in the area geologically that could be attracting or attracting these things or generating them? Or is this, do you suspect, maybe just an area where they pass through frequently?
Yeah, the area in question, Lock Key, seems to be a thin veil between two dimensions. It's practically identical to Hestelin, but from a geophysical point of view, and I think this is where you're trying to ask the question, is there has been no analysis geophysically of the land, where in Hestelin they have done geophysics and found it to be a lot more conductive than normal for electrical currents to run through.
Interesting. Okay.
So this just quickly going on to the latest research I've been dealing with to do with possible technosignatures around the Earth. Funny enough, when this was accepted, I sent details of what is it, actually before the paper came out or before the presentation, or was it after? But some other well-known physicists in the United States, I showed this, and they said, "Oh, that's impossible. How did you get through that? How did they accept this?" I said, "I don't know. They accepted it. Maybe I had the right language for this, but it got through the committee and everything." So what I'm going to show you now is the to do with the patterns around the Earth, So this is only 2 months ago or less, this was presented. This was, by the way, this was presented virtually. No, I wasn't physically there. It's great having technology like that, So this is using two databases: the New Fork one, which is well known in the United States, and the Hatch one, which is global, and it's a very reliable one. There were other databases like the French one, the CNES, there's UFOCAT, NICAP, Arrow, the famous Arrow, of course, from the government. We did actually we looked at the arrows, but there wasn't just enough data that we needed. This just giving you the characteristics that we had to take consideration before doing the analysis. So we were looking for three important things here. One is had to be multiply witnessed. Second, filming, if you had a minimum of 10 minutes filming. And the third criteria was having radar. The fourth would have been nice, and there were some occasions where the fourth one would have been thermal as well.
Okay.
Now, obviously, we didn't get some of the military stuff from the military, so we've had to go through other researchers that published papers over the decades of radar findings and such like. We did actually have two of them were fast walkers in outer space. I think the US military that accidentally put in some material that we discovered, thought, oh my God, they shouldn't be putting this stuff out. Maybe because it was back in 1970, what was it, 19...
Oh, the NORAD stuff here?
Late 70s or something, but we managed to get some stuff on that, which really excited me. The two databases, we would have gone back to 1940, right up to 2024. And then, as I said, we were looking for this criteria of reliability, that is multiple witness over 10 minutes duration filming. From that, you can determine the performance. What can you extrapolate? Well, what we were extrapolating was anti-gravity, hypersonics, and cloaking. So they were the three characteristics. And here's some more selected cases here showing the performance, anti-gravity, hypersonics, and cloaking. So when you take these reports and many more, which don't necessarily have to have radar, we can determine then some analysis. For example, we had a plot. We use Python software for this. So we actually developed a program to determine certain characteristics, which I'll go into later. So if you take this 37 events in the northeast part of the United States over a period of 1 hour and 39 minutes, 20 years ago, this is what has been demonstrated. This is just a sample of what we're dealing with from the New Fork. So not to go into all this detail, but we're actually looking for orbital periods and inclinations. So we use Python to test out various things for us. I'll just whiz through this. We had, there was actually originally between New Fork and Hatch, there was about 120,000 reports, but we deleted most of them. So we ended up with some thousands from New Fork and Hatch, which gives you a much smoother, better result. So we're analyzing time correlations. We're trying to determine orbital parameters from this, because what we found is that besides the velocities that we're dealing with and the behavioral movement, which you have to take consideration, of course, as well, we noticed that there was a common feature of direct ascents and descents, of the UFO, which might indicate that they could be using some sort of supercraft, way up in the higher altitudes. So this is just some of the, so the geospatial side of it. We had to take cluster analysis, trajectory modeling, and this is some of the graphs, distribution graphs, and it's coming out to, which I was rather excited about because it seems to fit in from previous research I was doing. It's coming out to about between 65 and 67 minutes. The original stuff way back was coming out to 65 minutes. And then with the, thousands of other reports that we've got on a global basis, that it is showing this 65, 66, 67 minute time.
So what does that, in plain language, what does that mean?
In plain language, it means that they're orbiting the Earth within 65, 66 minutes. They're actually doing one rotation around the Earth.
About every hour.
Yeah.
Give or take.
Just outside. But you can also determine the height that it may be at as well. And again, you're speculating they're using well, someone might say, well, they must be using some sort of anti-gravity to keep them revolving around, because it wouldn't be the ideal thing for us humans uh, with a technology like this, because we're using the orbit of the Earth due to gravity. So
Mm.
you're dealing with a LEO, a low Earth orbiting satellite. So we're using gravity to go around the Earth, which takes 90 minutes approximately, we'll say, like with the International Space Station. But in this case, it seems to be a lower altitude, and you'd have to have some power to keep it up there, at that height, and for that revolution to occur.
So this is
65
what
minutes.
and you mentioned the vertical descents. This is what leads you to suspect that there may be a super carrier, like an aircraft carrier type craft that drops these smaller craft.
Yes, and I actually show this in the theory, but just later on, how they actually operate. So as I said, that's the orbital period. And then when we come to the inclinations,
Mm.
it's coming out between 0 and 18 degrees. We have to do further work on this using Fourier analysis to fine tune it much better. There's a lot more work to do on this, but we may end up with knowing what the inclinations are. That'll be inclinations now in their orbit, in their orbital period around the Earth. So it's actually very close to the pole. It's like a polar orbit. All
Okay.
right. All the stuff that's sent up with satellites are not polar orbits. They're normal equatorial type um,
So
orbits.
this would be going from North Pole to South Pole back to a polar orbit around the Earth in a regular pattern about every 65 minutes,
That's
dropping
right.
off
Yes.
probes periodically to run an automated surveillance program that then they return back to the mother craft.
Yeah. So I'll actually show this to you coming up. Okay, that's to do with the clustering of all these reports. But anyway, we'll skip that. But so we come on to
Mm.
the theory that I think how this may be working. So as I was saying, that the orbital orbit. I mean, they're on some sort of orbital tracks here. That have to be. They're not sort of scattered all over the place. So I think they may be synchronized with the rotation of the Earth in order to actually carry out the monitoring. So it's, as I said, it's a 65 minute rotation of the probe, or the construct itself, the supercraft or whatever, and then they're ejecting. And you can see it on the diagram on the left here. So then they eject the probes. Could be one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, whatever probes, and that's for monitoring purposes at a much lower altitude. Um, so on the left is like what I think are the typical tracks at between 0 and 18 degrees from the pole. Um, the the I also suspect, and again this is speculation, that it's a rigid track in their movement orbit within, say, plus or minus 5 kilometers. If there's anything of extreme interest by the intelligence, then they would go off track. So it could be plus or minus 20 kilometers. Hence, say, the nuclear silos would be off track. That would be of something of interest back in those times, both in the United States and in Russia. So there's the paper that was presented at the bottom there. Eric Rowe, my colleague in Norway, and myself presented this. So then I think we end up with, yeah, so basically we're showing the results are, and this is not finalized now fully, but we're convinced it's around 66 minutes. Or the inclination, yeah, we're showing between 0 and 18, but I think we can fine tune that even further. You were asking me the question much earlier on, what about this predictability? That can only about, well, it's not predictability, it's windows of opportunity when events may occur or may not occur. But I think it depends on the if some of the tracks are intersecting each other. From the old research I was doing, I thought you'd have to intersect at points where the close encounters were taking place. So
I see what you're saying. So, in other words, a close encounter or an abduction, maybe abduction is probably not the best example, but when a person encounters a craft on the ground, they look up and they see it, it depends on whether what you're saying is that they may be seeing a probe that has been dropped from a larger craft, and that larger craft is continuing on a pre-set course, and it just loops and loops and loops. But the probe can come down and then do its own activities, and that may be what we're seeing, where we see some of these erratic movements that don't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then it returns back to the mother. Okay.
There are two other things in addition to that. One is I don't know if it's prograde or retrograde, the orbits, yet. That's on the way. I have to find out. Second, gosh, what was the second? Can't remember now. I've gone blank.
I'm pulling you all over the place. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. Was it to do with the closing events? Yeah, okay. We'll just keep going on. It might come to me then.
It just seems to me that if we had a reasonable idea of when to look and where to look, could we have a satellite in position to observe the intersection point where these orbital tracks kind of overlap? And if it just sat there and was on all the time watching, sooner or later we would see one of these larger craft pass through that area, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that was part of the purpose of the presentation, which I haven't shown all the details on this. The paper will come out early this year sometime. But the purpose was actually for scientists to be at specific locations around the Earth at specific times within the window, the time frame, the window of opportunity when the event may occur. Because that's the big problem, actually. How do you repeat something? Well, this may actually address that issue. All right. At the moment, with everybody that's in this field, scientific researchers, it's very much a random situation where I'm trying to get an organized situation here where it may actually occur at that location so that they can put their detection systems there.
Put the resources into it. Yeah, where you
that was the purpose from a mechanistic approach. Shall I continue on?
Please.
Yeah. Okay. I think this goes on to something different. Okay, it's like what we were talking about before, Clint. So what's missing in scientific UAP research is metaphysics. Metaphysics is the study of the nature of reality, existence, and who we really are. Quantum theory and quantum physics have added new dimensions to what we now call metaphysical science, providing us with tested and proven model that demonstrates how our physical world is not really physical. Neuroscience and consciousness studies have shown how the world we experience as physical is created by thought and feeling in the mind. And there are examples of this have been tested and proven. The intention experiment and the global coherence initiative are demonstrating the impact of human thought and emotion upon our planet and each other. There is no escape from metaphysics, that is, from the final implications of any proposition or set of propositions. The only way to avoid becoming a metaphysician is, I can't even read what the last bit is.
Is to say nothing.
It is to say nothing. Yeah, I can't see because all the icons are blocking it. So anyway, that was that's the premise of starting on to the next stage. Well, I think actually it should be the development in this whole UAP area. So what I'm suggesting is, and we've carried out work and research and confirmed that this works, is that the scientific and the experiential needs to be combined together. So you have the contemporary scientists, that's the mechanistic approach, and then you have the co-creative scientists, that's the scientists with the mechanistic plus the experiential. So I have a slide actually that might sort of clarify it a bit more. So what I'm saying is that the quantum leap for the scientists now, when you're dealing with the UAP area, is this approach. So setting up in the co-creative science a partnership with nature intelligence. I think this diagram here, I'm hoping actually it might clarify what I'm trying to explain. So by setting up nature intelligence by the scientist, the human being, because we, as human beings, we have this electrical connection through our whole system. The whole universe is electrical as well, and by applying that, you can set up this partnership with nature intelligence and define what the project is, which is, say to I don't know, it could be a future encounter or something like that with the non-human intelligence and their craft. So in that, you'll actually discover if you're going to get permission at all to do this. Because we're part of nature, and you can find out through your electrical system using maybe say kinesiology, a yes or no situation here. So you have to set up the foundation for the next step, which would be for the encounter that you want to lead into. So the tools for the research would be for scientists and researchers is that they are disconnected from nature. So although the astrophysical approach is important, but it only addresses one aspect. So you need to implement the tool of consciousness to improve our knowledge on this. So the methodology I was suggesting is this co-creative science approach for scientists and researchers. So it's setting up a partnership with nature intelligence, setting up a definition, a direction and purpose, and there's an intent behind it. So it's an organized, constructive way of doing it. Now you could say, well, you could do without this. Sure, you could. And get the same result, but the result might be quite actually, but not too organized in the sense that you're not getting the exact time when the event will occur and what the event is going to be about, because this is what I was saying, you need to define this beforehand with crystal clarity.
So you're saying
Yeah,
internally, mentally, the researcher has to kind of comprehensively prepare themselves with the intention in mind of like, this experiment is taking place within a larger system and we can't be separate from it. We have to be part of the same, we're all part of the same system. So the mental state of the researcher actually impacts the data. Is that
yes,
correct? Okay.
Yeah. The human being has to be in true partnership. So there's a resonance there taking place electrically with nature for this to happen. If it doesn't go that route, then the whole thing is aborted. Like you can put out I want to have contact with blah blah blah, but then you have other agendas on your mind, and that's going to abort the whole encounter that's going to take place.
I see.
That's the thing, because that will go to it out there as well, the nature, and to the connection that you want to deal with. So the contactees are very important in this. The importance of contactees and the communications with, sorry, this is blocked off with the screen here, I can't even see it, with the intelligence behind the craft. So that you can set up simultaneous operations of both contactees and scientific instrumentation. And this may significantly improve our knowledge of both the intelligence and the dynamics of the craft. So we will learn a lot more about how the craft operate and intelligence than just having retrieved craft and biologics. It's like you could actually learn a lot this way than actually having the retrieved craft and the entities there, because you're dealing with unembroidered parts of the whole thing. You're not getting the whole integral part of it when you have a retrieved craft and the entities there. There's I think by doing it this route, I think we'll learn a lot more actually.
So this is so it's such a stretch for the mind to wrap itself around this idea that I think back to in the early days of, say, the 1940s and 50s and 60s, the perception was that these were beings just like us that are in a physical craft. They get out, we can talk, we can exchange information, and there could be a sort of traditional, in the traditional sense, diplomatic relationship with them. But you're saying that there's an entirely separate dimension, or a whole nother dimension to this thing, an entirely another other level of consciousness that we have to. There's no escaping it. We have to get in touch with that to make sense of what we're seeing.
That's correct, and I'll actually show you this now. The next few slides.
Okay.
How it's done. Okay, shall we go forward?
Okay. Yes, please do.
Okay, so when we take there, it's actually quite rare to find conscious contactees that interact with the beings of the craft, etc. There are a number of cases. There's actually, I've come across 27 cases altogether where you have conscious contactees, as compared to unconscious contactees who are in their thousands, tens of thousands. But we're not dealing with unconscious contactees here. If we're going to get the, say, scientific results from this, it has to be conscious contactees. But that's my own opinion. All right. And there are enough. I've actually have just recently, I have 2 agreements already. This is actually my next project, by the way, which is quite complex to do, where I have agreement of 2 conscious contactees that are able to, they've already got a relationship. I don't have a relationship with the beings, they do, and then the craft come to them, whatever, the whole interaction. So in this case with the contactees, and if you remember, I know I've been emphasizing this partnership with nature intelligence, they would actually have to, the conscious contactees would have to get permission for what I'm trying to do. All right. I cannot assume at all that we can get the results unless they have an agreement with their relationship, which has been there for a long time, with their non-human intelligence or the human-looking type of people,
beings.
People.
I think that's what's confusing me, and maybe that's where I'm getting lost here, is that this idea that they would have an individual personal relationship with with a single person or 1 or 2 people, versus this idea, like you talked about, the zoo hypothesis or the laboratory hypothesis, where there's 8 billion humans just running around on the planet and they're more concerned about the bigger picture. It just seems it's kind of a stretch for me to understand how they would be connected to an individual person and say, oh, like Bob is thinking about us right now. Let's all get in the ship and let's go to where Bob is and let's put on a show for Bob. Does that make sense? Like, it just seems like that's a tough one for me to understand exactly how that would work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's put it this way, Clint. I'm I'm just going on the basis of what the information that's been presented.
Sure.
And with the conscious contactees, it's like I'm not going straight into reductionism on this. If these guys are claim they can do all this, all right, and I'm open for it. I'm not. What is it? I mean, of course, I would discriminate, but also, don't get me wrong here, but I don't want to affect the experiment, to affect all this by my prejudice or skepticism or whatever. Because if I do that, I just know, and this is from other experience with other people going back in the 90s, is that it aborts the whole the whole process, the actual encounter to take place.
The presence of skepticism or doubt in your mind causes the
Yes,
whole thing to self-terminate.
Yeah, if you that and hard beliefs and all sorts of things.
Interesting.
This is from three. What was it now? Three. I did three experiments. Sorry. Okay, three experiments. Every one of them failed, but I discovered why they failed, and there was a lot of work put into it. And what it was boiled down to was that what was behind some of the individuals, because you end up, if you have one individual can create the lowest common denominator and it affects everybody else, and then when we're dealing with it, it's not going to work, you know. So, but that took some while to experience.
So it's the flip of it's the flip side of, like, you have to see it to believe it. You're saying you have to believe it to see it.
Well, no, you don't have to believe anything. You just want to be neutral, positive about this.
Neutral, positive.
That's the right word.
Okay.
It's not I believe in any of this stuff. It's like
you're open to it.
Oh, absolutely open. Yeah, if this is the way to go, and well, I think it is the way to go. But that's my own opinion. But I think there's a whole empathic side to all this as well. That you know, with everything on this. So, shall I? Actually, I think I've blocked the slide again. I'll try and get it back. Oh, crikey. Does it seem to come up? I do before. Oh, yeah, okay. Maybe that. Sorry, it seems to drop the image that's on here. Oh, there it is. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I presented this for the very first time in Hesterland. That I felt this was the second generation of the UAP era, that we have to bring in the contactees into this. But it has to be the right contactees. They have to be selected for this. Well, maybe it's more than an experiment. I think it's, you know, it's. I think it's all to do with. Okay, there seems to be key conscious contactees that, in the relationship with the extraterrestrials, that I think in all these cases they are ETs, that the ETs want this to happen, like not to do with this experiment, but they want a new level of awareness on the planet, you know. And of course, these particular conscious contactees don't have the resources to do that. And it's like what you were asking there earlier on. Well, why are they coming to Jack Straw or whatever, you know, selecting that person? When you meet some of these conscious contactees, I found them very interesting. I've met, what, 4 now, but they seem to have an empathic, open heart, you know, resonance.
Yes.
About you have to, again, there's a whole psychology. You have to be around some of these people. And I met a guy from Colombia in South America, and through others, and he was so keen for the scientific side to be done on this. Also, whom I haven't met yet, is I can never pronounce his name, it's in Turkish. But he wants this out as well to the world and so forth, you know. But see, you have to set up a bridging mechanism to do this, you know. And I feel that the scientists are not entertaining. Well, they're not entertaining the contactees. They need to be, and that's why I presented this approach in Hesterland. And but you know, I feel it's also a stretch for, you know, some of the scientists there even, I found, you know. But You know,
Well, are you familiar with Chris Bledsoe, the case of Chris Bledsoe? Does that name strike
I
you?
have. Yes, I have. Yeah,
He
I've
seems
been.
to be able to consistently make contact with at least orbs on a regular, almost daily basis. And so it sounds like what you're suggesting is like you need to have somebody who's like that, and you bring them to the location where you want to do the tests and see if they have a measurable impact on the types of things that you're seeing in the area. Is that
That is
accurate?
correct, but they also have to, in their relationship, you know, Chris Bledsoe and his relationship with whoever he's dealing with, he would, I would imagine he'd have to get permission. Is it going to be in that location? You know, I'll say, oh, well, actually, it has to be done down in Brazil or somewhere, you know, for some
Sure,
reason.
sure.
Do you know what I mean? So
It
the thing
almost
is,
sounds
one
like,
has to be.
well, it almost sounds like we're on the cusp of, like, I imagine humanity, the human organism as an animal, has a very low level telepathic ability just innately. And maybe these beings are operating at such a high level that they're waiting for us to kind of evolve up to where we can actually communicate using the sensory organs that they have. Is that more or less? Like that the language they're speaking is telepathic in a sense.
That's right. Yeah.
And that the medium that they're using to communicate is the quantum telepathic internet. That's just so there could be this really lively, active communication happening all the time, all around us. We just have no way of seeing it; it's invisible to us.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're seeing is the occasional light in the sky or the occasional ship, but in fact, there's a much more lively situation going on. And maybe human beings are just behind a little bit. We're not where we need to be in terms of accessing those abilities to really participate.
Well, yeah, you're right, Clint. But that'd be only some human beings. I mean, there are other human beings that use telepathy, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, as well. I'll just keep going on because it literally leads into this what you're talking about. All right. So preparing for contact is essential for results. So I'm saying that telepathy is a form of quantum communications, quantum entanglement, quantum teleportation. So the neurons in your brain receive electrical pulses from your entire nervous system. And these neurons in certain people have the ability to connect to other quantum networks using entanglement. Um, so, yeah, so really is to develop our consciousness to tap into this larger reality. And telepathy is one of the key tools actually for the communications to take place. So common characteristics within the universe is to use our 3D technology, not an external 3D technology. Our 3D technology has inbuilt in us a neurological quantum communications tool, and in plain language, telepathy. All right. This is, I think, prerequisite actually for the communications to occur. It's not going to be by the electromagnetic spectrum using radio and microwave. This is the way to go, actually.
It's too slow.
Sorry. Oh, yes, it is too slow. Yes. So quantum communications, it's instantaneous communications, no matter what the distance. If you're 100,000 light years at the other end of our galaxy, that's the major axis, the line 100,000 light, it's instantaneous. It's not 100,000 years to get the signal there. So quantum comms, which brings in telepathy, it like you actually fall over this stuff. Quantum communication, right? Oh, actually, you fall into into consciousness, and then that's where the telepathy comes in. All right. So that's the tool. So then we another thing when you study some of the contactees, that many of the contactee cases are provided information that the occupants of the craft may be consciously resonating with the structure of the craft in order to be at one with it.
So the craft, in a sense, acts as like an amplifier, like a consciousness amplifier.
And this actually fits in not just with the conscious contactees or contactees that have been on the craft, but also the characteristics have been shown that by them, of course, that this is how they operate. There's a whole telepathic transference with the craft. I think it's come through in a number of the retrievals. Was it Roswell and some of the others trying to figure out actually how do they operate a craft, and there's no propulsion system there. And this would address that issue.
Yeah. And it would make it possible to maintain. I mean, how do you maintain a galaxy-wide civilization or a multi-planetary, multi-system civilization without communications that are instantaneous? It would be almost impossible. And to have various ships moving around in different parts of space, doing different things, it would be impractical unless you had something like this. So that it's almost like you have to have this to advance to that level.
Yeah. So if you're dealing with, say, an extraterrestrial civilization at a distance somewhere, and once they have addressed the planetary affairs of their planet, where in our case we haven't, all right, we're not ready for that, then you're in a position to expand out from that. That means that when you expand to, say, your neighboring star systems, stellar systems, it could be up to 200 or 300 light years away. You're not going to be using, the EM spectrum for this. Signal sent back 100 years and then waiting for a signal 100 years later.
Yeah.
So it's going to be instantaneous, exactly what you just said. So this is where the quantum communications comes in. And secondly, to do with travel, you'd need some sort of superluminal type of travel as well. I mean, it could be a lot more expected, but you could be using an Alcubierre type propulsion system for this. So you're distorting space and time in order to get to, the actual location you want to get to. Or some sort of, I know one of the cases where, and the claims within this particular case, and I have asked one of the conscious contactees how do they do it, and he said it's like they go into like a hyperspace, a non-time. The longest period of time actually is accelerating to get to the light speed. In getting to a faster than light position before you flip into this hyperspace and then flip out, and then you decelerate to get to the actual planet or something you're trying to get to.
Sure.
There. Yeah. Sorry, this screen thing is. Maybe it'll come out again.
Well, that's what you hear a lot about. Like, I think Bob Lazar described his experience going inside the craft. His first experience, he's like, it's kind of boring. It's creepy, but it's weird because there's nothing in there. It's just smooth. Almost like it's, we expect it to be filled with equipment and all kinds of different things. And there are some things in there, but more or less it's just one big molded piece of material.
Yeah, I mean, this, in the Bob Lazar case, it seems to be a common characteristics with most of the conscious contactees, with their relationship with, the craft and the beings and so forth, So I'll keep going on, actually, because it leads into more on the communication. So as I was saying, this is what I'm just presenting at Hestelin. The next generation is to bring in a wide range of multi-sensors, but simultaneously working with the contactee. That is, once they have in the relationship permission for us to do that, of course.
Have you followed the recent statements by Jake Barber, the whistleblower of the States, who's come forward and said that he was part of a recovery team that used psionic assets? They had actual people on the team that would go. They kept them in like shipping container type mobile office units where they would set these things up, and these people would be inside this sort of a Faraday cage, and they would go into a sort of a trance state, and they would communicate with the craft and actually be able to bring them in, sort of guide them into a particular area where they could be recovered. Have you heard of any of this?
I did. I saw the interview with who was it? Ross Coulthart
Yeah.
interview. I saw that. Yeah, yeah.
And he says that he's working with a team now of private investors, and his team that he's reformed from this military unit that are now trying to do this and have psionic assets actually right there in the location while they summon these craft, and have met with some success as far as I understand.
Yeah, I mean, philosophically, I'm not happy that military are involved in this because that's a particular agenda. I'm seeing more of a, as a civilian scientist, that we're doing this for everybody. It's not just military and governments. I'm really unhappy about that, actually, because, the nature of what it's about.
But in terms of the methodology they're using, that's similar to what you're describing here.
It's okay. When you integrate everything, yes, one aspect of it would be similar, but it's not actually taking everything into account. And this is why I mentioned earlier on about the partnership with nature intelligence. And the military are not using that.
No.
I can't believe it if they are, because basically it's not aligned to mankind, what we're meant to be doing. It's not military, all right? It's it's a different relationship that's needed, fundamental one, which is universal, but it's not military, So that's the only criticism I would have, actually, in that approach, And it's if it is true the case that we're dealing with empathic beings, which appears to be the case, I mean, the last thing you want is the military part of that. If you have entities that are with an open heart and energy, it's like, good God, and there's military behind it all.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. I think we seem to be at a weird impasse now, where people broadly agree that this is a real thing. It's happening. The military has got a lot of experience dealing with it, but to get past this, get over this hump, and get to some form of open, formal contact where we can actually have some kind of cultural exchange, it seems like that's what everybody's waiting for. And how we get there is anyone's guess, but it is related to consciousness and our state of mind.
Well, I'm going to show you that now in the next phase. All right. It's funny how you brought up the questions that are coming up now. Anyway, okay, so this is the UAP, non-human intelligence communications. So what I'm saying is that it requires protocols due to instant communications using quantum communications. And then quantum communication operates in real time, thus leading to scientific and intercultural exchange with an NHI UAP. You may wonder, how is this done? Well, I'll be explaining this as we go along. So it does require preparations of mankind for worldwide first contact. Now, I know first contact has already been made. There's been a lot of contacts made, but unfortunately, it's been, actually put it does this. We have that dichotomy there where those contacts don't exist for mainstream society. All right. So what I'm dealing with is in a mainstream situation. How it can be done. So it's a bridging mechanism between that area and then bringing it into mainstream, connection. This is non-military because I think, depending who you're dealing with, I don't think those guys up there, some of them, will be happy about this if it's military. And it's unfortunate the military may be using the situation because of the empathic side to these beings or intelligence, So rather like an innocent child, but I think there's a lot I think as you consider growth in life and so forth, you're coming out of that egocentric state into a more, you know, and you feel it's okay. It's not without a. Once you understand the ego, I think it's more of a worldwide, mankind situation. But that's why I'm not too happy about the military aspect of this. Now, here's this will be this is dealing with the post-contact communications with NHA behind UAP. This is coming out in a publication this year. It'll be the second half of the year. This and it explains it in a lot more detail. But just to give just on the slide, so mankind may become a member of the cosmic community. So there are actually four things actually we need to take into account. Some of them we've already done, like under sensitization with the media, conferences, and so forth for the first phase. Some of this has already been done. People going to how should I put it, dealing with the wide range of this reality that's already there in many categories. It's not just the UFO Aryan contactees. It's and many other to do with medicine, to do with I don't know, energy or something like that. But so the preparations you need to, in the preparations to organize a network for this to work, I think. And then the first contact, with beginning of the exchange with actually my slide is blocked by part of the screen here, so I can't really see it properly. For a socio-cultural initiative, that'd be phase 3. And so the sensitization, this is all the research and studies and published papers and science journals covering all aspects of NHI communication, social and linguistics, intelligence, media, television, documentaries, books. I mean, some people are exposed to a lot of this stuff. Like 50% of all the blockbusters seem to be dealing with extraterrestrial intelligence, So in that sense, people are aware that, what could it be like in the future, so I suppose we have to go through, these the visual form. So yeah, and conferences, and so forth. And then the preparation. So it's really raising awareness within the global community. I think it's already happening. What I've come across over the decades. So and upgrading.
You think we've moved kind of out of phase 1? We're starting into phase 2 now.
Yeah, it's a mission. That's what I think is happening. In this, and a lot more people to catch up on this. Yeah, but it depends on their where they're at in their life. A lot of the stuff may have absolutely no interest at all with a lot of individuals who might come across, and that's fine. But they're probably all, it's like I see every human being is searching. What's this all about? So, and in the searches, I suppose, what's that famous philosopher, Joseph Campbell in the States, way back, was it
the hero's journey?
Yeah, the hero's journey, it's sort of, I think going through that process, so creating networks, connect and cooperate, scientists, engineers, artists, all whole range. It doesn't have to be techie type people in this. It's a whole range of, could be doctors, whatever. Preparations for a first worldwide contact. So phase 3 would be the contact. Mankind would be about how would this come about? I mean, I feel you need a structure to do this, but secondly, you need to select the right contactees, conscious contactees that have common characteristics for who they're dealing with. But there's a fair bit of work there to do with that area, selectivity, of the right people for this, because they would be the tools for, bringing this in, and then all these other people would be asking questions and everything, through them, we'll say, if they don't have the faculties of telepathy or whatever. So I'm not too happy about the United Nations, but anyway, I thought I'd put something in. But A new era would be mankind will enter a new era, becoming maybe a new member of the cosmic community. It really depends on how the effort that we put into all this. But it would be beginnings of intercultural and scientific exchange, upcoming change, structural and institutions. I mean, that can still happen without the doing something like this. I mean, with the there's a lot more awareness by governments around the world to do with the UAP area. It could change, institutions. Uh, this would be influenced by maybe the academic community, who are a lot of them are going into this area, as you probably know. So and it's also open to up all possibilities of people connecting up. So you'd have worldwide communication centers before and after. So before like first contact, be a transition as a step-by-step process supporting mankind, and then the after, like the committees. First, dealing with, I put in extraterrestrial civilization because not too sure yet. Contact event, find out about what Kardashev class they're in. I think we'll get some idea on this as we evolve into this. And then their agenda is so important in this. And I have some ideas of where their agenda may be, what it is actually. But so mankind may begin intercultural and scientific exchange with the non-human intelligent or ET civilization or whatever, because you're dealing with a wide range of I think communities here. So ET Civilization Council, that's Earth-based, by the way. So committee, communication centers, country centers, and then a committee made up of a whole range of people, and then mankind civilization culture, that'll be phase 2 and 3. So I'm just going through this fairly fast because so the first contact event background information would be taken in phase 2 and 3. Who are they? I mean, these are fundamental questions, I know, but we might know something even before that as one develops in this whole arena to the UAP. So where do they come from? Why are they? Why, you see, we may be asking the wrong questions even. Why are they in communications? Importance of communications technology. Look at worldwide communication centers, beginning of the intercultural scientific exchange with representatives of non-human intelligence or ET civilization or whatever. I'm a bit blocked out actually with all these icons down here. I can't even see what's below this. But so the first contact event would be live stream. This would be on a global basis in 4 different zones and time. It doesn't stop because it's the Sabbath day on a Sunday or something, with this, that, and the other. Oh, yeah. Or, Muhammad's. So it's like, no, this is universal. We have to deal with that. So, so we have to have, joint statements for mankind to begin the intercultural and scientific exchange. So we don't know what day or year it's going to be, but it'll be on a continental basis, 4 different zones. Okay, so the contact initiative is selecting nodal points. This would be the zone where the center is around the Earth. So for the global communications, selecting the right contactees for this. The training of the contactees may be important because up to now, no one has been listening to them. They have this communications, but this would be to organize them and train them in. Once they actually have an agreement in the relationship with whoever they're dealing with, as communication operatives, and that would be the key tool then for everybody else to, behind them. That is, it may not be just the one contactor you're dealing with in one center. You may have 4, 5, 6, because you can't do this, 24/7 maybe. I don't know, but something that has to be worked out. This is what I'm proposing.
Like a rotating.
Okay? Future communication technologies. Yeah, because that's gradually developing now, QC, from the technological side of things. Besides having the natural technology that's already in us, which is telepathy. Then preparation again. for first contact. It's key that, and this is why I was unhappy about the military and side of things. So ethics to support living in harmony and peace with all aspects of creation. Different game altogether. This is not your Star Trek. The only criticism I had with Star Trek in the past was, they kept claiming the prime directive, and sure enough, they were actually going into those planets. I mean, I
they
thought
break it every time it comes up.
Yeah,
it only comes up on episodes where they break the prime directive. Yeah,
yeah.
Sure.
I was a young lad listening to this. Oh my God, the break of the prime directive. Anyway, address all humans at all ages and from any cultural background. How to establish and be in contact with the NHI, so ET or whatever. Blah 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 blah, and all that, and then go on to the training, selecting all this kind of stuff, theoretical principle thought. You have to watch again. You in the training, you need to be stable in this. You don't need to be on ayahuasca when you're doing this kind of work. Sorry, I'm making a joke. So it's your thoughts and emotions and balance that will be picked up by them. Telepathically, that all this stuff, our emotions will be picked up by them. So if you're into having 5, was it whiskeys or something before, and I'll forget about it. You're going to be all over the place. So
you really need the Buddhist monks from a monastery who've been really trained for generations to do this kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the right people are out there. They're just to be found.
Sure.
There's some trained in. So this is just giving you a snippet of how it could be done, principles and applications. So harmony and balance, that is what to think, what to tell, what do I do in the balance. Now, all this is picked up already because in telepathy, it's instantaneous, the communication taking place. They're going to pick this up before. So it's like it's okay. You could say it's just to training a pilot in an aircraft, but there's a whole lot of preparations needed before you fly off. And so in this case, for the pilot or the contactee, you need that harmony and balance as fundamental to this. So the right attitude, as I explained before, in encounters that take place, if you've got all hard beliefs and other stuff, it's like, this may not work for that person, so that was a bad selection. Well, so raising awareness, be respectable, be curious, good attention, focus your attention, focus on your dialogue partner. That's the ETI, a person, whoever, or a group, or whatever it is up there. Open dialogue. And then the 5 steps for the communications. So it would be exchange information and check possible alterations. 2, interpret. 3, reevaluate. 4, adapt. And then back to step 1 and close dialogue. So, I know this is a constructive way of doing it, but, like we're so used to training in many different areas, if you're a pilot, because there's a whole organized approach and structure to the whole thing. Because as human beings, we seem to thrive on structure and stuff. Well, some of us do anyway. And I think in this case, you need to have a structure behind this for this to work.
This is so fascinating because it presents a number of challenges. It seems like our whole society is really ill-equipped to take this step. Like our society as it exists today would be trying to figure out, how can we make money off of this? Which corporation is going to be in charge of communication with the thing? How does the military maintain control? Where does the American government fall into all of and all of those questions are questions that are super serious for the way we're set up today. But what you're proposing seems to be a total departure from all of those ways of thinking into something that's way more, almost like a spiritual practice in a sense. Like there's no expectation of any one group dominating it. It's got to be much more holistic, much more attuned to the global population as a whole instead of one group in particular. I could see a lot of challenges with trying to get there from here.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So you'd have to set up a civilian organization that would have the right mission statement and intentions and all this, and having the right people for it. Unfortunately, I can't see governments involved in something like this because um,
They would mess it up.
it's just the agenda is not the right agenda. The agenda for this is what I've just portrayed here just earlier. It's just not going to work for corporations, military, you name it. This is really the people of Earth actually for this to work. I can't see any other way of doing it. I had
It's
looked
much more
into.
inspirational, your vision, and it does. Although you're right about the Prime Directive, I think broadly speaking, Star Trek did a really good job of articulating a world where we're past that type of thinking, and we've evolved to a new way of looking at other life forms and other forms of intelligence from a standpoint of curiosity uh, and wonder. And I hope that that's in the future for us. I hope that that's something that we can actually get to in a short period of time before we wipe ourselves out. Eamon, I have to close this up a little bit. We're running very short on time on my end, but I'm just curious from your vantage point, what would you like to see next? Where do you think we need to go in the next, say, decade? And what's your hope for the near term?
Well, now, I mean, there are challenges for doing something like this, but I think having the right people, you'd have to have a lot of trust in this. Maybe it's I don't know. I feel it's the next step actually that if something like this is organized, um, that I think it'll work. I wouldn't have put this together 20 years ago.
Mm.
You have to experience so many things actually en route when you're doing this research. And I feel actually that this is the route to take for the next step. This is going to bring in the new level of awareness onto the planet, I think.
This is what's missing. It's our approach that's wrong. We may have the right ideas, but the approach is not the right approach. You're saying this is what it's going to take to really go there.
Yeah, this is not a hard belief or anything like this. Is through a whole process of figuring this out. How can you do this?
Sure.
It's not going to be by SETI and at a radio telescope you get a signal. It's it doesn't mean anything. That this is all to do with relationships with the who's there, and that's what we need to develop. And I feel that this is the next step for us to in the cosmos. Even if we don't leave the planet, doesn't matter. I think we'll learn an enormous amount about this. And actually, I had finished, Clint, just because the next slide was a thank you one.
Oh,
something like that. I can't remember. You timed it beautifully.
Perfect timing. Well, it seems clear to me, and I am in agreement with you that the real, true final frontier is consciousness. It's not space. It's going to be consciousness, and however we proceed, we're going to have to expand our consciousness to get there. This has been so fun and very enlightening, and it's just been a joy to listen to your presentation and to be able to pick your brain a little bit. And I just want to thank you again, Eamon, for taking the time to do this. I would really, really love to set up a follow-up and maybe get into some more of the particulars. I know we just scratched the surface of a very, very large iceberg here, but perhaps we can do it again sometime soon.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me, Clint.